Hey, so this video is for beginner woodworkers that are looking for a short, simple, easy project that is cheap that you can sell to make some money. And what that is a rustic serving tray. And the best part is that it can be made with one 1x4 by 10 feet long pine board that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever is near you. Let's go. Okay, so this lumber can be made out of 1x4s. Standard 1x4s are 3.5 inches wide. That is important to maintain the size dimensions of this project. So the first thing we're gonna do is cut down 2 pieces that are 14 inches long, and then we're gonna cut 4 pieces that are each 18 inches long. We're gonna do that on the miter saw. If you do not have a miter saw, you can do this with a circular saw, just be careful. Now that the pieces are cut to length, you should have 2 that are 14 inches long and 3.5 inches wide. These are all 3/4 of an inch thick, and then 3.5 inches wide by 18 inches long. You should have 4 of them. So set the 14 inches long ones aside for a second. Lay the 18 inches long ones out like this next to each other and put the good side up. Usually boards have a good side and a bad side. Some of these have knots on both sides, and that's fine. But so once we get them arranged, line them all up with each other so that the ends are flush to each other. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the 14-inch long ones and we're gonna attach one on each end, one here, and again, one down here. Make sure that's all flush. If you cut these right, the 14-inch ones long should be flush on the outside because we have 3.5 inch wide ones in the middle, totaling 14 inches. So this should be flush. And then, so we're gonna attach these to this. Now, if you have a brad nailer, a trim nailer, you can use that. If you don't, you can use a screw maybe from the bottom side just so you don't see it. This is gonna be the top. And then if you don't have either one of those, you can just use glue. Glue will hold perfectly fine. It's more than strong enough. Maybe just need some small clamps or something that can help hold it in place while the glue dries. I'm gonna be using a trim nailer because that will help hold this in place while the glue dries and I don't have a need for clamps. So as long as everything's squared up and aligned, we can take some glue and put it here on the back side of our 14-inch long pieces. And this doesn't have to be pretty because you're never gonna see it. Once that gets installed here. Now, if you wanted to take this a step further, where you did not see the screw heads or the nail heads on top, you could nail this up from the bottom, because again, down there will be the bottom. But since this is rustic, I don't see it being a big deal. Hold one in there. Now, one thing to note when you do this is make sure that you're using relatively short trim nails, because again, you're doing 3/4 inch material and there's 2 pieces, so 1.5 inches. So make sure that your trim nails are not longer than the thickness of that, but you want them long enough so that they can go through the first layer and into the second layer to actually hold the material in place. I believe these are 1-inch nails and they're working perfectly for this application. So this side is attached. We're gonna turn it around to the other side and do the exact same thing. We're gonna put some glue on the back side of this, get everything lined up and square and nail it. The tray is now nailed and ready for finishing. Before we start finishing, the next step kind of depends on how nice you want this to be. What I'm going for is a rustic farmhouse style tray. So to me, it doesn't need to be sanded perfectly. If you wanted to, you could work your way through the sandpaper grits. You could start with an 80 grit, sand everything in that, move up to 100, 120, all the way up to 220 to get it silky smooth. In my opinion, that's not necessary on this because again, the nail heads are exposed. It's more of a rustic style, so it doesn't need to be primed and pressed, so to speak. But I am going to take a little sanding sponge here. You can get these on Amazon for a couple bucks. 220 grit sandpaper and just give it a light scuffing just to kind of get the edges knocked down where they're not so sharp. One thing to note that if you are using pine and you're using an electric sander, like a random orbital sander or something similar, be careful and move quick because pine is very soft And if you leave it sitting too long, it will sand a lot of material off very quickly. Now that it's sanded, we're ready to put some finish on this. I'm going to use some wood stain. This is made by Minwax and the color is dark walnut. But again, you can use whatever color you want. You can paint this, but I think stain would just look better to match that kind of rustic style. So in order to do this task, I have a can opener, a can of stain, a foam brush. In my opinion, this works best for applying stain, and then you can just throw them away. You don't have to wash out your brush. And then a set of gloves because I don't want stain all over my hands. Another thing to mention while we're staining this is that since it is rustic style, the stain doesn't have to be perfect. If it's blotchy or globbed up, no problem. Just brush it out a little bit thinner or take a rag and wipe it out, which is what I end up doing. So the way I apply stain on rustic style projects is to apply it on very, I guess, liberally, meaning a lot at a time. Get it in all the nooks and crannies so that no more white wood is showing. And then once I get done applying it with the brush, I'll go back through with a rag and wipe off all the excess. And if you need to raise up your board or your project, just put a scrap piece of wood down, and that way it kind of gets it up where you can brush it in. So with stain, one thing you will notice is on the end grain, the end of the wood, that stain absorbs a lot quicker because the end grain takes the stain quicker. So you might need to apply a little bit extra stain on these end grain pieces as well as these 4 end grains on the bottom, just something worth mentioning. So now that all the stain is applied, fairly quickly after we get it applied, we want to come back through with some paper towels and just wipe off all of the excess. In my opinion, wiping off the excess, it is at this point where the board starts to actually look kind of rustic because you go from a very dark, evenly solid colored stain to more of lighter and darker variations in the wood. And that's kind of, again, in my opinion, what gives it that rustic look. Now our stain is applied, we've wiped off the excess. Now we need to let this dry, and it is very important to let this dry before we move on to the next step. Okay, the stain has now dried and we are ready to apply some sort of clear coat. And the reason I say some sort is you can do whatever you want. This tray, in my opinion, is not intended for you to eat directly off of. So you're not gonna have like blades, you know, it's a serving tray. So I'm going to use Watco's spray lacquer in a rattle can, but if you wanted to, you could do some sort of polyurethane, some sort of water-based poly, wipe-on poly, really whatever you want just to get a clear coat applied and kind of seal this thing and bind everything together. Once our board is dried, we are ready to do the final step, which is install some handles for this tray. You can use whatever type of handles you want. They actually make some rustic style handles that you just nail in. That would probably be the easiest because then the only tool you would need is a hammer. The nails would come in the kit and you would nail the plate on there and then you're done. But in this case, I have these black cabinet door handles, which I think will look good because it almost blends a little bit of modern with the rustic. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay these out. And I know that the distance between these is 3 inches. So I need to find the center of this. We made it 14, so that's 7.5 inches each side. So we're going to go to 8.5, and we're going to go to 5.5. And I'm going to put a little mark here. 5 and 7.5. And again, you can lay these out where they're centered this way as well on the board. So that way we have holes 3 inches apart for the handle that are also centered on each side. And now we're going to drill out for the bolts that will hold the cabinet handles in place. And again, if you buy cabinet handles, these bolts that fit in here will come in the kit. They'll come with the handles. So let's drill these out. All right, so the bolts will go in from the bottom side here, and they will screw into the handles here on the front. Once I get them started, I can use the drill to drill them in all the way. So that side started, get this side started. Okay, so they're both started. We're gonna put a Phillips head driver into my drill. and drive them home. All right, this was a quick and easy project. There is a target market for this. Again, you're not gonna eat off of this, but you could serve drinks on this at a rustic themed wedding, or if you have a rustic farmhouse or you own some sort of venue or a lake house or a cabin in the woods. This could be something that you maybe set some flowers on or sit at an entryway. There are many uses for this, and it's something simple that can get you started again as a beginner woodworker that you can sell. So let's talk about the cost here. You only need one 10-foot long 1x4 pine board to do this project. The most expensive thing in this project will be the handles. The only tools, or the only other things that you need besides the wood and the handles are some wood glue, and then again, maybe some brad nails. As far as tools, if you do it the way that I did it, you will need a few extra things: sandpaper, rubber gloves, a foam brush, some stain, some lacquer. You will need a drill, a nail gun, and a miter saw. Other than that, it's pretty simple, and you can get away again without having a nail gun. You can hand nail these together. You can screw them together if you have a drill, or again, just buy some hand nails and hand nail this together. If you wanted to, you can almost make it a feature, have some nails that have some patina on them, some certain finish, and make it a design with the nails maybe. But again, there are certainly ways to do this without having crazy tools. And again, this whole project, you probably have less than $20. Even if you could sell it for $35, then you nearly doubled your money. And this took probably 2 hours of time. So as a beginner, this is certainly a good project to get you started. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.